The tension in the room was already thick when Hillary Clinton walked in, wearing her signature pantsuit, confident as always. She had called this meeting to discuss the party's messaging strategy, expecting the usual nods and agreement from fellow Democrats. But Jasmine Crockett had other plans. She had discovered something that would turn this routine meeting into Hillary's worst nightmare. As Hillary took her seat at the head of the conference table, surrounded by party leaders and donors, she had no idea that the young Congresswoman sitting just 3 seats away was holding evidence that could destroy everything Hillary had built. The stage was set for a confrontation that would go down in political history. To understand the magnitude of what was about to happen, you need to know who these two women really are, and why this confrontation matters so much to the future of American politics. Jasmine Crockett represents everything the Democratic Party claims to stand for. Born and raised in Missouri, she worked her way through law school, became a civil rights attorney, and fought for justice in courtrooms across Texas before winning her congressional seat in 2022. At 43, she's part of a new generation of Democrats who aren't afraid to challenge the establishment, even when it's uncomfortable. Crockett built her reputation by taking on powerful interests and winning. She's known for her sharp legal mind, her ability to cut through political nonsense, and her refusal to back down from anyone, no matter how powerful they think they are. Her colleagues respect her, her constituents love her, and her opponents fear her. But Hillary Clinton? She's been playing this game for decades. Former First Lady, former Senator, former Secretary of State, and the 2016 Democratic presidential nominee who still believes she should have won. At 77, Hillary represents the old guard of the Democratic Party, wealthy, connected, and used to getting her way through backroom deals and political favors. For months, Hillary had been working behind the scenes to influence the party's direction, using her vast network of donors and political allies. She still commanded respect from many party leaders who owed their careers to the Clinton political machine. But what she didn't know was that her latest scheme had been discovered. The stakes couldn't be higher. This wasn't just about two politicians disagreeing. This was about the soul of the Democratic Party. Would it continue to be controlled by wealthy elites like the Clintons, or would it embrace the new generation of fighters like Jasmine Crockett? The meeting had been called to discuss messaging strategy for the upcoming election cycle, but Crockett had uncovered something that changed everything. Through her work on the House Oversight Committee, she had obtained documents that revealed Hillary's secret plan to manipulate party funding and candidate selection. The evidence was damning, and Crockett knew she had to act. As the meeting began, nobody expected what was about to unfold. Hillary Clinton thought she was walking into a friendly strategy session. Instead, she was about to face the political fight of her life against an opponent who had done her homework and wasn't afraid to use it. The conference room fell silent as Hillary Clinton called the meeting to order. The mahogany table was surrounded by some of the most powerful people in Democratic politics: senators, governors, major donors, and party officials who had gathered to hear Hillary's vision for the party's future. "Thank you all for coming," Hillary began, her voice carrying that familiar tone of authority she'd perfected over decades in politics. "We're here because our party needs strong leadership and clear messaging. The American people are looking for experienced voices they can trust." She clicked to the first slide of her presentation, outlining her proposal for a new Democratic Leadership Council that would coordinate messaging and candidate recruitment. It looked professional, well-researched, and completely reasonable. But Jasmine Crockett knew better. "As many of you know," Hillary continued, "I've been working with key donors and party leaders to ensure we have the resources needed to win in 2024 and beyond. This isn't about any one person. It's about building a sustainable future for our party." Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Several party officials nodded approvingly. Hillary's presentation was smooth, polished, and designed to make her proposal seem inevitable. She talked about unity, about bringing the party together, about learning from past mistakes. But then something unexpected happened. Jasmine Crockett raised her hand. "Hillary, I have a question about your funding proposal," Crockett said, her voice calm but firm. The room turned to look at the Congresswoman, surprised by the interruption. Hillary's smile tightened slightly. "Of course, Jasmine. What would you like to know?" "I'm curious about how you plan to ensure transparency in candidate selection. Specifically, I'd like to know about your communications with certain donors regarding primary elections." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Hillary's presentation had carefully avoided mentioning how candidates would actually be chosen or how donors would influence those decisions. It was the kind of detail most politicians hoped nobody would ask about. "I'm not sure what you're implying," Hillary responded, her tone growing cooler. "Everything we're proposing follows all legal and ethical guidelines." Crockett opened her laptop and smiled. "I'm sure it does, Hillary. But I think the people in this room, and the American people, deserve to know the whole truth about what you're really proposing." The tension in the room was palpable now. Party leaders exchanged glances, unsure what was happening but sensing that this wasn't going according to Hillary's script. Hillary herself looked annoyed but tried to maintain her composure. "Jasmine, I appreciate your questions, but perhaps we could discuss any concerns you have after the presentation," Hillary said, attempting to regain control of the meeting. "Actually, I think now is the perfect time," Crockett replied, standing up from her chair. "Because what I discovered changes everything about what you're proposing here today." Hillary's face flushed slightly. She wasn't used to being challenged so directly, especially not by someone she probably considered a junior member of the party. "I'm sorry, but I really think— Did you or did you not meet with Marcus Goldstein and Sarah Chen from the Democracy Defense Fund last month to discuss funding primary challenges against progressive candidates?" Crockett interrupted, her voice cutting through Hillary's attempt to deflect. The room went completely silent. Marcus Goldstein and Sarah Chen were two of the Democratic Party's biggest donors, known for their moderate positions and their dislike of the party's progressive wing. If Hillary had been secretly coordinating with them to influence primary elections, it would be a massive scandal. Hillary's face went pale. "I meet with many donors about party strategy. That's part of my role as a former nominee and party leader." "That's not what I asked," Crockett pressed. "I asked specifically about discussions regarding primary challenges, because I have documentation of those meetings, Hillary. And what you discussed wasn't just strategy, it was manipulation." The other people in the room were now fully focused on the exchange. This had gone far beyond a simple question and answer session. Crockett was making serious accusations, and Hillary was clearly uncomfortable. "I don't know what you think you have," Hillary said, her voice rising slightly, "but I can assure you that any meetings I've had with donors have been completely appropriate." Crockett clicked on her laptop, and suddenly the large screen at the front of the room displayed an email. "This is from your private email account, Hillary, sent to Marcus Goldstein on October 15th. Would you like me to read it to everyone here?" Hillary's eyes widened as she recognized the email. She had written it from what she thought was a secure account, discussing strategy for defeating progressive candidates in upcoming primaries. The color drained completely from her face. "How did you—" Hillary started, then stopped herself. "How did I get access to evidence of your scheme to manipulate Democratic primaries?" Crockett finished. "Through legitimate oversight work, Hillary. The same kind of oversight that's supposed to keep our party honest." The room erupted in whispered conversations. Party leaders were staring at the screen, reading the email that clearly showed Hillary coordinating with major donors to influence primary elections. It was exactly the kind of backroom dealing that many Democrats claimed they opposed. Hillary tried to regain her composure. "Jasmine, you're taking private communications out of context. Political strategy discussions are normal." "Are they, Hillary?" Crockett interrupted again. "Because this email specifically mentions targeting troublesome progressives and discusses how to neutralize their messaging. That doesn't sound like normal political strategy to me. That sounds like the kind of corrupt politics Americans are tired of." The confrontation was escalating rapidly. Hillary, who had walked into the room expecting to present her leadership proposal to a friendly audience, was now being exposed as someone who had been secretly working to manipulate party elections. And Jasmine Crockett wasn't done. "There's more," Crockett said, clicking to another document. "Financial records showing how donor money was being directed to specific races, communication logs proving coordination between your team and major donors, and evidence of pressure being applied to party officials to support your preferred candidates." Hillary's hands were visibly shaking now. This wasn't just an embarrassing moment. This was a complete destruction of her credibility and her plans for continued influence in the Democratic Party. The woman who had always prided herself on being prepared and in control was being systematically exposed by someone she had clearly underestimated. "This is a witch hunt," Hillary finally said, her voice cracking slightly. You're trying to destroy me with selective leaks and out-of-context communications." Crockett smiled grimly. "No, Hillary. I'm trying to save our party from the kind of corruption that cost us elections and betrayed our voters' trust. The American people deserve better than backroom deals and donor manipulation." The room was in chaos now. Some party officials were clearly shocked by the revelations, while others seemed to be calculating how this would affect their own positions. Hillary Clinton, the woman who had been at the center of Democratic politics for decades, was watching her influence crumble in real time. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't finished. The biggest revelation was still to come. The moment of truth had arrived. Hillary Clinton sat at the conference table, her face ashen, as damning evidence of her secret coordination with donors filled the screen behind her. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't done. She was about to deliver the knockout blow that would change everything. "Hillary," Crockett said, her voice steady and authoritative, "all of this evidence is serious enough. But there's something else. Something that goes beyond just influencing primaries." Hillary's eyes darted around the room, looking for support from her allies, but the other party leaders were too shocked to respond. The emails and financial records had already done enormous damage to her reputation. "I don't know what else you think you have," Hillary said weakly, "but this ambush is inappropriate and—" "An ambush?" Crockett interrupted, her voice rising with righteous anger. "You want to talk about ambushes, Hillary? Let's talk about what you did to Maria Santos." The name hit the room like a lightning bolt. Maria Santos was a popular progressive candidate who had been running for Senate in Florida until her campaign mysteriously collapsed 3 months ago due to sudden funding problems and negative media coverage. Hillary's face went completely white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really?" Crockett clicked to a new document. "Because I have the receipts, Hillary. All of them." The screen now showed a detailed timeline of events surrounding Maria Santos's campaign collapse. Phone records, email chains, financial transfers, everything that proved Hillary Clinton had orchestrated the destruction of a fellow Democrat's campaign because Santos refused to back down from her progressive positions. "Maria Santos was leading in the polls," Crockett continued, her voice growing stronger. "She had grassroots support, she was raising money from small donors, and she was going to win. But that wasn't what you and your donor friends wanted, was it, Hillary?" The room was dead silent. Everyone knew Maria Santos's story, a young Latina lawyer who had built an incredible campaign from nothing, only to see it fall apart seemingly overnight. Many had suspected foul play, but no one had been able to prove it. "You used your connections to pressure her major donors to withdraw support," Crockett said, clicking through document after document. "You coordinated negative opposition research and leaked it to friendly media outlets. You even had party officials threaten to withdraw support for other candidates if they endorsed her." Hillary tried to speak, but no words came out. The evidence was overwhelming, and everyone in the room could see it. "But the worst part," Crockett continued, her voice now filled with moral outrage, "is what you did when Maria tried to fight back. When she refused to drop out despite losing her funding, you made it personal." The screen now showed a series of text messages between Hillary and various media contacts, discussing ways to attack Maria Santos's character and qualifications. The messages were brutal, calculating, and showed a level of personal vindictiveness that shocked even seasoned political operatives. "You destroyed a good woman's career because she threatened your control over the party," Crockett said, turning to face Hillary directly. "You talk about unity and leadership, but you're nothing but a political machine that crushes anyone who doesn't serve your interests." Hillary finally found her voice, but it was shaky and defensive. "Political campaigns are tough. Everyone knows that. If Maria Santos couldn't handle the pressure—" "The pressure?" Crockett exploded. "You're calling coordinated character assassination pressure? You're calling donor manipulation and media hit jobs pressure? This wasn't politics, Hillary. This was corruption." The party leaders around the table were staring at Hillary in horror. Many of them had respected her for decades, but the evidence Crockett was presenting painted a picture of someone who would destroy anyone who got in her way. "And Maria Santos isn't the only one," Crockett continued, clicking to another section of documents. "I have evidence of similar operations against at least 6 other progressive candidates over the past 2 years. All of them had the same thing happen: mysterious funding problems, sudden negative media coverage, and pressure from party officials to drop out. Hillary's hands were trembling visibly now. The systematic nature of her campaign against progressive candidates was being exposed in detail, and there was no way to explain it away. "This is why our party keeps losing," Crockett said, her voice now addressing the entire room. "This is why young people don't trust us. This is why working families think we don't represent them. Because people like Hillary Clinton care more about maintaining their power than fighting for the values we claim to represent." Senator Robert Martinez, one of Hillary's longtime allies, leaned forward in his chair. "Jasmine, these are serious accusations. Do you have independent verification of these documents?" Crockett smiled. "I'm glad you asked, Senator, because I didn't just bring documents. I brought witnesses." She clicked a button on her laptop, and suddenly, Maria Santos appeared on the conference room's video screen via a live connection. The young lawyer looked determined and angry. "Hello, everyone," Maria said, her voice clear and strong. "I've been waiting 3 months to tell this story." Hillary Clinton looked like she might faint. The woman whose campaign she had destroyed was about to testify against her in front of the entire Democratic leadership. "Maria," Crockett said gently, "can you tell everyone what happened to your Senate campaign?" "I can do better than that," Maria replied. "I can play you the recordings." The audio that followed was devastating. Phone calls of Hillary personally pressuring donors to abandon Maria's campaign. Conversations with media contacts discussing how to take down the progressive candidate. Strategy sessions where Hillary and her team planned the systematic destruction of Maria's political career. Hillary tried to object. "Those recordings were made without consent. They're illegal." "Actually, they're not," Crockett interrupted. "Maria was recording her own phone calls, which is legal in Florida. And more importantly, they prove everything I've been saying about your corruption." As the recordings continued, painting a picture of Hillary as a ruthless political operative who would destroy anyone who challenged her control, something remarkable happened. One by one, the party leaders around the table began to turn away from Hillary. Senator Martinez shook his head in disgust. "Hillary, I've known you for 20 years. How could you do this to our own people?" Governor Sarah Williams from Michigan leaned back in her chair. "This is exactly why we keep losing elections. The American people can smell this kind of corruption from a mile away." Even some of Hillary's closest allies were distancing themselves. The evidence was too overwhelming, the moral outrage too clear. "You want to know what Maria Santos told me when I first contacted her about this investigation?" Crockett asked, looking directly at Hillary. "She said she almost left politics entirely because of what you did to her. A brilliant young lawyer who wanted to serve her community almost gave up on public service because Hillary Clinton decided she was a threat." Hillary finally exploded. "This is all lies. Political hit jobs. You're trying to destroy me because you can't handle real leadership." But her outburst only made things worse. Everyone in the room could see the recordings, read the emails, and examine the financial records. The evidence was undeniable. "No, Hillary," Crockett said calmly. "You destroyed yourself. I just brought the receipts." The room erupted in arguments as party leaders began choosing sides. Some defended Hillary out of loyalty, but most were clearly horrified by what they had learned. The Democratic Party leadership was fracturing in real time. "This meeting is over," Hillary declared, standing up abruptly. "I won't sit here and be subjected to this character assassination." But as she moved toward the door, Crockett delivered the final blow. "Hillary, wait. There's one more thing you need to hear." Hillary stopped, her hand on the door handle. "Maria Santos isn't just a witness in this case," Crockett said. "She's also announcing her run for Democratic National Committee chair, and she has the support of over half the state party chairs across the country." Hillary turned around, her face a mask of shock and fury. "That's right," Crockett continued. "While you were busy trying to control the party through backroom deals and donor manipulation, Maria was building real grassroots support. The very person you tried to destroy is about to take over the party you thought you controlled." The silence in the room was deafening. Hillary Clinton, the woman who had been a dominant force in Democratic politics for decades, was watching her world collapse around her. "The Democratic Party doesn't belong to you, Hillary," Crockett said. It belongs to the people, and the people are ready for new leadership. The conference room in Chicago that had started as Hillary Clinton's strategy meeting had become the scene of her political downfall. As party leaders filed out in stunned silence, the implications of what had just happened began to sink in across Democratic politics and the nation as a whole. Hillary Clinton left the meeting without saying another word to anyone. Her staff quickly surrounded her as she walked through the hotel lobby, but the damage was already done. Video clips of her confrontation with Jasmine Crockett were already spreading across social media, and the story was exploding into the biggest political scandal in years. Within an hour of the meeting's end, #HillaryExposed was trending on Twitter. The hashtag climbed to #1 as clips of Crockett's presentation and Maria Santos's testimony spread like wildfire. Democratic voters across the country were sharing the videos, expressing their outrage at Hillary's behind-the-scenes manipulation. I always wondered why so many good progressive candidates suddenly had their campaigns fall apart, wrote one Twitter user. Now I know it was Hillary Clinton pulling the strings the whole time. Another posted, Jasmine Crockett just exposed the corruption that's been destroying our party from within. Finally, someone with the courage to speak truth to power. The mainstream media picked up the story immediately. CNN, MSNBC, and the major networks all led their evening broadcasts with coverage of the confrontation. Even Fox News, normally critical of Democrats, praised Crockett for exposing corruption within her own party. Political commentators were calling it the most significant moment in Democratic politics since the 2016 primary. Jasmine Crockett didn't just challenge Hillary Clinton, said veteran political analyst David Gergen. She exposed a system of control and manipulation that many Democrats suspected but could never prove. The evidence Crockett had presented was so comprehensive that even Hillary's strongest defenders found it difficult to argue with. Former campaign staffers began coming forward with their own stories of Hillary's behind-the-scenes pressure campaigns. Donors who had been pressured to withdraw support from progressive candidates started speaking to reporters. Maria Santos, meanwhile, became an overnight sensation. Her video testimony from the conference room had been viewed millions of times, and her announcement of her run for DNC chair was generating massive grassroots support. Young Democrats especially rallied around her story of fighting back against political corruption. Maria Santos represents everything our party should be, posted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Young, principled, and willing to fight for working families instead of wealthy donors. But the impact went far beyond social media. Within 48 hours of the confrontation, 3 major Democratic donors announced they were withdrawing their support from Hillary's proposed leadership council. State party chairs across the country began publicly endorsing Maria Santos for DNC chair. Senator Martinez, who had been one of Hillary's longtime allies, held a press conference announcing his support for new leadership that puts principles before politics. Governor Williams issued a statement calling for accountability and transparency in party leadership. The financial implications were enormous. Hillary's network of donors, which had been the source of her continued influence in Democratic politics, began to collapse as major contributors distanced themselves from the scandal. The Democracy Defense Fund, whose leaders had been caught coordinating with Hillary, saw their board of directors resign en masse. Republicans, meanwhile, were having a field day with the story. This is exactly what we've been saying about Democratic corruption for years, said House Speaker Mike Johnson. Hillary Clinton represents everything that's wrong with Washington politics. Former President Trump, never one to miss an opportunity, posted on Truth Social, Hillary Clinton got destroyed by Jasmine Crockett. Even Democrats can't stand crooked Hillary's corruption anymore. But perhaps the most significant impact was on the Democratic Party itself. The confrontation had exposed deep divisions between the establishment wing led by figures like Hillary Clinton and the progressive wing represented by Crockett and Santos. Progressive organizations across the country rallied behind Crockett's call for accountability. Justice Democrats, the Sunrise Movement, and other grassroots groups announced their support for Maria Santos's DNC bid and called for investigations into Hillary's donor coordination. This is our moment to take back our party from the corporate interests and political machines that have controlled it for too long, said Justice Democrats Executive Director Alexandra Rojas. Traditional Democratic organizations found themselves in a difficult position. Many had been part of Hillary's network for years, but the evidence of corruption was too overwhelming to ignore. The party was facing its biggest internal crisis since the 2016 primary battle between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. 3 days after the confrontation, Hillary Clinton finally issued a public statement. "I regret that my private communications have been taken out of context," she wrote. "Throughout my career, I have always fought for democratic values and candidates who share our vision for America." But the statement was widely seen as inadequate. Democratic voters and party leaders were demanding real accountability, not political spin. Jasmine Crockett, meanwhile, was being hailed as a hero by progressives and praised even by some moderates for her courage in exposing corruption. She appeared on every major news program, calmly and methodically explaining the evidence she had uncovered. "This isn't about destroying Hillary Clinton," Crockett said in an interview with Anderson Cooper. "This is about saving our party from the kind of corruption that betrays our voters and helps Republicans win elections." When asked about her political future, Crockett was characteristically direct. "I'm focused on representing the people of Texas and fighting for democratic values. But if our party needs leaders who are willing to stand up to corruption, I'm ready to serve." The interview was watched by over 10 million people, making it one of CNN's highest-rated political interviews of the year. Crockett's approval ratings soared, and speculation began about her potential run for higher office. A week after the confrontation, Maria Santos officially announced her campaign for DNC chair, with Jasmine Crockett as her national campaign co-chair. The announcement drew thousands of supporters to a rally in Miami, where Santos laid out her vision for a Democratic Party that served working families instead of wealthy donors. "The party belongs to the people, not to political machines," Santos declared to thunderous applause. "And with leaders like Jasmine Crockett fighting for accountability, we're going to take it back." Hillary Clinton's influence in Democratic politics effectively ended that day in Chicago. Her proposed leadership council was abandoned, her donor network collapsed, and her allies distanced themselves from her. After decades at the center of Democratic power, she had been brought down by a 43-year-old Congresswoman who refused to stay silent about corruption. The confrontation also changed how Americans viewed political accountability. Voters across the country were inspired by Crockett's willingness to challenge powerful figures in her own party. It proved that principled leadership could still triumph over political machines. Young Democrats especially saw Crockett as a role model. "She showed us that you don't have to wait your turn or play politics to fight for what's right," said college student and activist Jessica Chen. "You just need courage and evidence." The story became a case study in political science classes across the country. How did a single congresswoman manage to take down one of the most powerful figures in American politics? The answer was preparation, courage, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. 6 months later, Maria Santos won the race for DNC chair in a landslide, with Jasmine Crockett playing a key role in her victory. The Democratic Party began implementing new transparency rules and accountability measures designed to prevent the kind of corruption Hillary had practiced. Hillary Clinton, meanwhile, retreated from public politics. She canceled planned speaking engagements, stopped appearing on news programs, and largely disappeared from the political scene that had defined her life for decades. But the impact of that day in Chicago continued to ripple through American politics. Jasmine Crockett's confrontation with Hillary Clinton proved that corruption could be defeated, that powerful figures could be held accountable, and that the Democratic Party could be reformed from within. The story of how one congresswoman brought down a political dynasty became an inspiration to activists and politicians across the country. It showed that in American democracy, the truth still matters, and courage can still triumph over corruption. As Jasmine Crockett said in her final interview about the confrontation, "Democracy only works when people are willing to fight for it. Sometimes that means challenging your own side when they're wrong. But that's what real leadership looks like." The woman who had left Hillary Clinton speechless had changed everything, not just for the Democratic Party, but for American politics itself. And as citizens across the country watched the aftermath unfold, they were reminded that in a democracy, no one is too powerful to be held accountable. That's the story of how Jasmine Crockett exposed Hillary Clinton's corruption and changed the course of American politics forever. If you found this story as incredible as we did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more breaking political news that the mainstream media won't tell you. The fight for accountability in our democracy is far from over, and we'll be here to cover every development. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.